Despite the NBA having a 95% vaccination rate, it was Brooklyn Nets All-Star Kyrie Irving grabbing headlines this week for his refusal to get the shot. Irving went on social media to explain his decision after the Nets announced he wouldn't be allowed to play or even practice with the team under the city's vaccine requirements.
In order to be in New York City, in order to be on the team, I have to be vaccinated. I chose to be unvaccinated, and that was my choice. And I would ask y'all just to respect that choice. This is not a political thing here. This is not about the NBA. This is not about any organization. It's really about my life and what I'm choosing to do. Don't believe that I'm retiring. Don't believe that, I'm going to give up this game for a vaccine mandate or staying unvaccinated. Don't believe any of that shit, man.
All right, my next guest is an NBA legend and an outspoken advocate for getting the COVID vaccine. Six-time NBA champion and Hall of Famer Kareem Abdul-Jabbar famously featured in a PSA that showed him getting the shot. Kareem, it's an honor to have you join us, and thanks for being such a great example.
How far does, when you think about this being sort of the apex property, how much goes into just the fact that it's taking sunlight and turning it into something that's cryptographically protected, and how much of that stance is that this evens the playing field?
I think of Bitcoin as like that shining city in cyberspace where billions of people will eventually want to live, right? Instead of moving from Europe to America, or moving from the old world to the new world, or whatever, or moving from the planet to cyberspace. We can't move to outer space yet. I can't get 1 billion people off the planet and settle on a better Earth, but I can move 1 billion people to cyberspace. Bitcoin is property in cyberspace. It's 21 million city blocks in cyber Manhattan. The people that move there first, right, get to buy the land cheapest. And then, how many people will eventually want to live there? Well, unlike Manhattan, where there's a limit, there's really no limit. Why wouldn't everybody want to live there, right? I mean, I don't know that there won't be other cities in cyberspace that might meet other needs.
Colds. Colds are a virus. A cold gets in your nose and your sinuses and starts to duplicate there, producing a lot of mucus. Many will experience post-nasal drip mucus dripping down the back of the sinuses into the throat when they go to bed. The mucus contains a virus or bacteria. When it reaches the back of the throat, it causes swelling and inflammation and can even spread into the ears. Colds and flu usually start in the ear canal. At the first onset of a cold or flu, put 3 drops of silver in one ear and lay on your side for 6-10 minutes, then repeat with the other ear. 90% of symptoms will be wiped out by the next morning. Taking droppers of ShopFreeMart pure silver concentrate 3 times daily, and spraying intranasally 4 or 5 times daily, will help reduce congestion and inflammation. Using pure silver concentrate as a mouth rinse, ear drops, eye drops, nose drops, and throat spray can also be helpful as well. ShopFreeMart Saga has antiviral properties as well as supplying nutrients that support a strong immune system. If you are prone to frequent colds, you should also cleanse the colon using a good probiotic.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Gerald Salenti, and we're all very honored and very privileged to be with Judge Andrew Napolitano, or Napolitano, because we're both Napolitanos, and I got 2 Napolitanos and the real Napolitano here, Judge Napolitano, and of course, to celebrate our being together, a nice cup of espresso to start the day off.
Espresso. God
Hand
bless you.
ground, very different than putting those beans in that machine. It burns them up. But when you grind it by hand, no bitterness. But there is a lot of bitterness going on in the world right now, and particularly in the United States, where once the land of freedom life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness has gone into a dictatorial mandates that are being forced upon us. And Judge Napolitano has a new article out, and that'll be out shortly, later tonight. And it begins with, "It is distressing for those of us who believe that the Constitution means what it says to observe the destruction of liberty caused by vaccine mandates."
Well, Gerald, you know, the destruction of liberty is on both sides of the aisle here. First of all, it's always a pleasure to be with you, even if you're taunting me with that fresh ground espresso. And here's what I mean. In the same week, President Joe Biden said he plans to sign an executive order. No, he hasn't done this yet, which will direct the Department of Labor to direct the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, commonly called OSHA, really the nose under the camel's tent of the federal government getting into the workplace, but that's another argument for another time, to compel all employers of 100 persons or more to assure that those persons are vaccinated against COVID-19. And if the employer fails to do that, the employer can be fined $14,000 per day per employee. Biden's people made the number up. When they realized from listening to people like you and me and our colleagues that they made the number up, they decided to insert it into legislation. Now, the legislation hasn't passed yet, but if inserted into the legislation, it would permit these cumulative fines, and it would also permit a fine of $700,000 on top of the $14,000 per day per employee for an employer who persistently violates these regulations. So at the same time that Joe Biden said he's going to issue that executive order, which he hasn't done yet, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, who in my opinion, his heart is in the right place. He's trying to protect the freedom of conscience of those who don't want to be vaccinated. He ordered that no employer may compel vaccinations. So you have one order compelling vaccinations on private property and another order prohibiting vaccinations on private property. They both violate the sanctity of private property. Neither was written by a legislature, by Congress, or by the state legislature. Both were made up by an executive, one Biden, an authoritarian, the other Abbott, his heart in the right place, but he's got to read the Constitution. And now they're both trying to enforce these. So it's a terrible state of affairs. Conservatives are rejoicing in what Governor Abbott did, and they should be lamenting it. Whenever the government puts its ugly hands and its big nose into private property, no one who believes in property rights should rejoice, because the government is only going to go onto private property to compel or to prohibit. Remember what Ronald Reagan once said, the 9 most dangerous words in the English language are, hey, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. The government is never there to help you. The government is there to help themselves.
On this important issue, let's jump right to this. What do you make of Kyrie Irving saying it's not about being anti-vaccine, it's about what feels good to me? What's your reaction to that?
I can understand that he wants to do what feels good to him, but what feels good to him can endanger other people, his teammates, their families, and the other people that work in the Nets organization. If he's going to be around them unvaccinated, he's a risk. So at that point where he is exposing his teammates and the people that he works with to the risk of infection, he's not being a good teammate, and he has to understand that. They have to protect themselves to the extent that they can, and masking and vaccinations have been proven to be effective to that end. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's a tough issue because, I think a lot of people out there want to, give him the space to figure this out, but the season is upon us, so we're out of time. What do you imagine is going on behind the scenes with his teammates inside the locker room, with the coaches? I assume they're starting to turn to tough love as the approach to dealing with this right now.
Well, I think that tough love is the only way out for them because they got to think about the whole organization. They can't just think about one player and have him waste their time and effort and money trying to cajole him into playing, given the rules in New York City. He has to accept that.
Right, he doesn't seem to. And we've seen some public officials on the right embrace Kyrie Irving as a hero. I'm sure you've seen some of this, but some of the tweets are kind of shocking, but maybe not surprising. Here's just a couple from Donald Trump Jr. Kyrie just sacrificed more than Kaepernick ever did. Florida Republican congressional candidate Laverne Spicer, she says they let Magic Johnson play basketball with full-blown HIV, but won't let Kyrie Irving play because he won't get a COVID shot. I mean, obviously all of that stuff is ridiculous, but if these are the people who are supporting him, shouldn't Kyrie Irving see that as a warning sign?
I think he should, and he doesn't seem to understand the people that he's aligned himself with and the position that he has aligned himself with, which is that it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not. Just let this COVID go wherever it feels like going. And we can't have that. We have to protect ourselves. Kyrie went to school in America. In order for him to go to grade school, he had to be inoculated against rubella, measles, polio, and a couple of other things. He's already been vaccinated. If he's not aware of that, oh yeah, chickenpox, I forgot that. So if he's not aware of that and doesn't understand that he's already been vaccinated, he's way behind in terms of knowledge and understanding of what the problem is.
To that promise. Within weeks of President Biden being sworn in, the Department of Justice dismissed a Civil Rights Division lawsuit it had against Yale University for explicit racial discrimination. Yale has a policy that discriminates against Asian Americans at admissions. It does so brazenly and openly. And yet, the Department of Justice decided that preventing racial discrimination did not fit within the purview of the Biden DOJ.
Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chairman just said the Trump DOJ was political and went after their opponents. Are you kidding me? 3 weeks ago, the National School Board Association writes President Biden asking him to involve the FBI in local school board matters. 5 days later, the Attorney General of the United States does just that, does exactly what a political organization asked to be done. 5 days. We've sent, Republicans on this committee have sent the Attorney General 13 letters in the last 6 months. It takes weeks and months to get a response. 8 of the letters, we've got nothing. They just gave us the finger, said, we're not going to get back to you. And all our letters were actually sent to the Attorney General. Here's a letter sent to someone else asking for a specific thing to be done, and in 5 days, the Attorney General does it. Here's what the October 4th memo said. Quote, I'm directing the FBI to convene meetings with local leaders. These meetings will open dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting. Dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting. A snitch line on parents. Started 5 days after a left-wing political organization asked for it. That's not political. I don't know what is. Where's the dedicated lines of communication with local leaders regarding our southern border? Something that, frankly, is a federal matter. Where's the dedicated lines of communication on violent crime in our cities? Violent crime that has went up in every major urban area where Democrats have defunded the police. Nope, can't do that. Can't do that. The Biden Justice Department is going to go after parents who object to some racist, hate America curriculum. Nope, can't focus on the southern border where 1.7 million illegal encounters have happened this year alone. A record number. MS-13 can just waltz right across the border, but the Department of Justice, they're going to open up a snitch line on parents. Think about this. The same FBI that Mr. Garland is directing to open dedicated lines of communication for reporting on parents just a few years ago spied on 4 American citizens associated with President Trump's campaign. Clinton campaign hired Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired Christopher Steele, who put a bunch of garbage together, gave it to the FBI. They used that as the basis to open up an investigation into a presidential campaign. Oh, and then there was Mr. Zussman, who worked at Perkins Coie, the firm hired by the Clinton campaign. He cut out all the middlemen. He just said, I'm just going to go directly to the FBI, and not just anyone at the FBI. Who'd he go to? Jim Baker, the chief counsel at the FBI, handed him a bunch of false information, told him false information, and of course, he's been indicted by the special counsel. A few weeks ago, the IG at the Department of Justice released a report that found that the FBI made over 200 errors, omissions, and lies in just 29 randomly selected FISA applications. But don't worry, the Attorney General of the United States just put them in charge of a dedicated line of communication to report on parents who attend school board meetings. Mr. Chairman, Americans are afraid. For the first time during my years in public office, first time, I talked to the good folks I get the privilege of representing in the 4th District of Ohio, folks all around the country. They tell me for the first time they fear their government. And frankly, I think it's obvious why. Every single liberty we enjoy under the First Amendment has been assaulted over the last year. Stop and think about it. Americans were told you couldn't go to church, couldn't go to work, couldn't go to school. Small business owners were told you're not an essential business, close your doors, causing many of them to go bankrupt. We were given curfews, stay-at-home orders. Last fall in Ohio, you had to be in your home at 10. In Pennsylvania, when you were in your home, you had to wear a mask. In Vermont, when you were in your home, you didn't have to wear a mask because you weren't allowed to have friends and family over. And of course, there's always a double standard with these folks. The folks who make the rules never seem to follow them. And now the Biden administration says get a vaccine or lose your job. Even if you've had COVID and have natural immunity, get a vaccine or you will lose your job. Oh, I almost forgot. The Biden administration also wants another dedicated line of communication for reporting. They want a second snitch line. They want banks to report on every single transaction over $600 for every single American to the IRS. The IRS, that agency with its stellar record of customer service, the IRS, you know, the same IRS that targeted conservatives the last time Joe Biden was in the executive branch. Jefferson said once, tyranny is when the people fear the government. We're there. Sadly, we are there. But I don't think the good people of this great country are going to cower and hide. I think your memo, Mr. Attorney General, was the last straw. I think it was the catalyst for a great awakening that is just getting started. Pilots at Southwest Airlines, the Chicago Police Union, parents at school board meetings, Americans are pushing back because Americans value freedom. A few weeks ago, Terry McAuliffe said this, I don't think parents should be telling schools what to teach. When government tells parents we're smarter than you, Americans aren't going to tolerate it. When the Attorney General of the United States sets up a snitch line on parents, Americans aren't going to tolerate it. I think they're going to stand up to this accelerated march to communism that we now see. America's going to fight the good fight. They're going to finish the course. They're going to keep the faith because Americans value freedom.
And let me ask you about something else. Some star players who have been vaccinated, like LeBron James, took them a while to get around to getting vaccinated. Of course, there was a lot of coverage about that, but some of these folks have declined to publicly advocate the vaccine for others in the way that you're doing right now, Kareem. Are you disappointed in some of those players like LeBron? And do you think it's fair to demand more of him than other players because he has that bigger platform? Does he need to take on a leadership role in this, do you think?
I think LeBron has the discretion to take on the issues that he feels are important. Now, for LeBron and his family, they're vaccinated. Now, he's not making a big deal of it, but if you want to understand how LeBron feels about it, just look at the example that he gives us all in his life without talking about it. LeBron has to worry about the beginning of the season. It starts when? It just started. So, that's what he's supposed to be focused on. And maybe he has taken a position that he's going to focus on that and let people who have more time, people like me, talk about the the necessity of everybody going along with vaccinations and wearing masks.
Colds. Colds are a virus. A cold gets in your nose and your sinuses and starts to duplicate there, producing a lot of mucus. Many will experience post-nasal drip mucus dripping down the back of the sinuses into the throat when they go to bed. The mucus contains a virus or bacteria. When it reaches the back of the throat, it causes swelling and inflammation and can even spread into the ears. Colds and flu usually start in the ear canal. At the first onset of a cold or flu, put 3 drops of silver in one ear and lay on your side for 6-10 minutes, then repeat with the other ear. 90% of symptoms will be wiped out by the next morning. Taking droppers of ShopFreeMart pure silver concentrate 3 times daily, and spraying intranasally 4 or 5 times daily, will help reduce congestion and inflammation. Using pure silver concentrate, as a mouth rinse, ear drops, eye drops, nose drops, and throat spray can also be helpful as well. ShopFreeMart Saga has antiviral properties as well as supplying nutrients that support a strong immune system. If you are prone to frequent colds, you should also cleanse the colon using a good probiotic.
Well, here's something that's kind of sad but true. The overwhelming majority of people may dislike something, but in real life, nothing really changes until powerful people stand up against it. And that's why this is a significant story. Country music star Travis Tritt has announced he is canceling any performance in any venue that mandates masks, requires COVID vaccinations, or pushes unreasonable COVID testing protocols. Why is he doing this? Travis Tritt joins us now to explain. Travis Tritt, we are honored to have you on the show tonight. Thanks so much for coming on. And I'm just going to ask you to explain why you're doing this and let you talk.
Well, we've done about 75 shows so far this year, all over the country, Tucker. And in spite of the fact that some people would try to label these as being quote unquote super spreaders, the actual numbers don't reflect that at all. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. In most of these areas, we've seen the COVID numbers actually drop dramatically over the last few weeks and months. And so it came as quite a shock to me and a lot of my fans when after the first week of October, during the first week of October, a lot of these shows had restrictions placed on them, not by the state, not by the local city government, not by the local health department, municipalities, but by the actual promoters / venue owners.
Yes.
And there was nothing that justified it. And so I started getting a ton of messages from fans who were basically not warned about these mandates or restrictions ahead of time, showed up at the gate and were turned away, and were not even offered refunds. They were offered credits to a upcoming show that had to be used within the next 12 months or else they lose their money for tickets. And it was just heartbreaking to me. These people have been shut out from getting a chance to go see concerts for over a year, and they're finally getting a chance to do that again, and now they're being turned away for some unexplained reason. So this is not about following the science or trying to look out for the safety of the people there. This is about something else. This is trying to divide people.
That's right.
This is trying to shame people. This is trying to basically discriminate against people that they don't feel are clean enough to be a part of enjoying a concert like that.
Man, that's so nicely put. So the question is, you're not the only touring artist who's experiencing this, but you're one of the very few I'm aware of who said anything about it, who said, I'm not putting up with this, I'm not going along with it. Why did you decide not to go along with this? I mean, because you could have just ignored it like everyone else is.
You know, I come from hardworking, middle-class family. And I have been extremely blessed. I came from nothing to have a wonderful, wonderful career that has lasted for over 35 years in this business. And to see people that I know these people. These are hardworking Americans that just want to take care of their families, put food on the table for their families, put a roof over their head, and occasionally go out and experience a concert, you know, enjoy themselves, forget about all their troubles for a little while, and to be able to enjoy all of those different things. That's something that I felt like I had to stand up for. Freedom for all of those people to be able to go out and do what they enjoy doing and enjoy a concert without being harassed.
Man, and you were willing to lose money on that principle.
Yeah,
you were
absolutely.
a credit to country music. I appreciate Travis Tritt. That was great. It was great to see you
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you very much.
Choose not to get it. Now, again, this does not mean that I'm okay with the rest of the mandate. I'm not. And I respectfully but very strongly disagree with my friend's characterization that this is just fine for the federal government to do. The federal government lacks general police powers. The lion's share of the authority within government in our system lies with the states and their political subdivisions. Our national government is in charge of just a few basic and distinctively national matters: national defense, a uniform system of weights and measures, trademarks, copyrights, and patents, regulating trade or commerce between the states with foreign nations and with the Indian tribes. There are a handful of others, but there is no power in there that just refers to providing generally for laws to make the American people safe and healthy. Those powers exist in America. They just aren't vested in this government. It doesn't mean that states and localities will always exercise that power wisely or prudently or compassionately, but it means insofar as you're going to act through government, that's the appropriate place and not this one. Now, my friend from Connecticut then responds by saying, yeah, but the power's still there anyway. Even if I were to assume his point, that the power of the federal government somehow extends to an individual vaccine mandate, which it doesn't. And I'd challenge him or anyone else to cite what provision of the U.S. Constitution it is that provides that authority. But even if we were to accept the premise, just for purposes of discussion, that the federal government may exercise such authority, the president may not exercise that authority alone. The very first clause of the first article in the first section of the first article of that Constitution says all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Article 1, Section 7 then makes clear that in order to pass a law, a federal law in the United States, that is, in order to adopt a policy of the federal government, enforceable through the overpowering force that is the federal government, you have to follow the Article 1, Section 7 formula, which means you've got to take a legislative proposal, a bill, you've got to pass it in the House, and you've got to pass it in the Senate with the same language, and it has to be submitted to the president for signature, veto, or acquiescence. If you don't undertake that process at all, there is no authority in the executive to do anything like what they're describing. What President Biden has done is to arrogate to himself powers that he not only characterizes as federal, but really are legislative powers that he doesn't possess. The President of the United States is the chief executive. He's not a lawmaker, and he's certainly not the entire legislative branch. And so that really is quite beside the point. It doesn't make a difference with his federal authority. The fact that federal authority is asserted to exist, which it's not, and when we can't identify a single clause of Article 1, Section 8 or another part of the Constitution that can fairly be read, especially against the backdrop of its original public meaning, to convey that power. But even if you concede that point, there's no reasonable, plausible, defensible argument that would say the President of the United States may wield this authority unilaterally. That is what despots and tyrants would have the power to do. And if there's one thing that's very consistent and uniform in our constitutional structure, it's that no one person, no one group of people is ever supposed to be able to accumulate dangerous degrees of power, and that the President of the United States is neither a lawmaker nor the entire legislative branch.
But there is an analogy. The only way you make the volatility go away is you make the opportunity go away. The reason you went west was because people weren't living there and you wanted thousands of acres to yourself to live a better life, right? And when you got there, you found that there was no one that had come before you to, to clear the thing, and build a house for you and give you running water and hand the keys to you and do your bidding. Because, you were going to a new place. That was where the opportunity was. So I think it's very quintessential to the American spirit or the entrepreneurial spirit or just the human spirit. What about immigrants? A nation made of immigrants. People went from a country where they had nothing to a country where they could have something. That's the story that you see over and over again. Is there volatility? Is there a risk? Yeah, always, right? Is there opportunity? Yeah. When do you leave? Look, the rich first sons of the nobles in Europe didn't come. Yeah. It was the poor, disenfranchised, the people that didn't have a choice that came, right? The Protestants left Catholic countries, the Catholics left Protestant countries, the poor left every country. Those who were, hoping for a better life came. And, if you're sitting wealthy with lots and lots of stuff and a comfortable lifestyle, and a comfortable portfolio, you might not see the same impetus, right? You wouldn't have the same inspiration to do something. Why'd they do it?
So you're saying that the bold are the ones rewarded?
If you choose correctly, right? The ones that moved too soon, went to certain colonies, that on the Potomac River and the James River, and they died, right? So there's a lot of early settlers who took arrows in their back, in the 1600s. On the other hand, by the mid-1700s, by 1736, people had been living in North America, and you had Philadelphia and you had Massachusetts, successful colony and the like. So if you choose the right decision or make the right decision at the right time, you can have a better life, but there's still risk, right? So why'd the people come from Europe? They came for property rights and civil rights. Right? They either couldn't exercise their religion or there was no hope for them. All the property was owned by someone else. And, property rights matter. A lot of people don't realize this. They think that they think that property rights are a nice to have. Property rights are a nice to have the same way that fat on your frame or an insulin are a nice to have. If I strip away your insulin, you're a type 1 diabetic. You can't form fat. If you can't form fat, you can eat all day long and you're going to starve to death. It's not a nice to have to store energy over time. Fat is an organic energy battery and property is a social energy battery. So being able to store property means I can go 3 months without a job and not starve and live a life. There is no hope for a civil life without property. So people went from Europe to the U.S. for property. When they got to the East Coast, they went west. It's in the American ethos. Was there a bumpy ride taking a wagon train over the Rocky Mountains? You ever fly over the Rocky Mountains and look down? Before they had the railroad and before they had the highways, and then you ask, how did people actually cover the turf? It's like, yes, it was a bumpy ride. There was volatility along the way. I think the risk and the discomfort today of owning Bitcoin is a heck of a lot less than the risk and the discomfort of getting in a ship or getting on a horse or, you know, getting in a wagon or walking, right, or settling and doing what you need to in order to secure your civil rights and your property rights and your freedom. I mean, I suppose if the Chinese, you know, made it illegal to own Bitcoin, but there was a Chinese Bitcoin, there might be a Chinese version of Bitcoin in cyberspace, kind of like Alibaba, you know, and Ant and WeChat kind of branched off from Facebook and Google and Amazon. So there might be some other digital dominant monetary networks or dominant monetary networks, but Bitcoin is the greatest, the greatest monetary network that the human race has ever developed, and it's certainly the dominant one right now, and it looks like it's going to be continue to be the dominant one for as long as we live. So what makes it dominant? Well, I mean, clearly the architecture is proof of work, or in other words, throwing up a wall of encrypted energy, right? It's all of the crypto hash power that's channeling energy through the hashing function, which creates the stability and the security. And so it's based upon the architecture, but ultimately the appeal of it is that it's an open, permissionless protocol that everybody on Earth can engage in. Anybody can mine it. So anybody can contribute security to the network, and anybody can run their own node, and anybody can own it, and then any company can plug into it. And so there's nothing that open. There is no monetary protocol or asset or currency that is so open as the Bitcoin asset. And so that's what's driving its value right now. It's an opportunity for people that have little to lose and much to gain. It's an opportunity for everybody, though. I mean, the way I think of it is, it's a moral imperative, a technical imperative, and an economic imperative. Morally, it's an imperative because it's the best hope for 8 billion people to secure their property rights. If I give you a $50 Android phone, you can carry around in the Android wallet your property, and no bank or no hostile regime can seize it. And and that's the best property right you're ever going to get. I think it's a technical imperative for the same reason. You've got 8 billion mobile phones that will all have property. And so what's more important, storing your photos and your videos on your mobile phone, or storing all your money, all your life force on your mobile phone? I mean, you're worried about losing the photos you took on your iPhone, or you're worried about losing your life savings? Clearly, it's more valuable. So it's a technology imperative for an Apple and Amazon and Google and Facebook, and companies like Square and PayPal and Binance and Coinbase are already extraordinarily successful by embracing it. You can see that right now. And finally, it's an economic imperative because there's $500 trillion worth of fiat derivatives, cash and bonds and stocks and real estate that's valued based upon cash flows. And all of those things are being devalued at 1% a month, something. So we can go back and forth over what's the rate of currency expansion, but you know, it's not that hard to see that this is a $25 to $50 trillion a year problem for anybody with assets on Earth. It's very rare that you find a technology that's the solution to every rich person's problem and every poor person's problem simultaneously.